So welcome to the Talking Eco Capabilities webinar series at Anglia Ruskin University. Eco Capabilities is a research project funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and it links children, well-being, arts and culture, outdoors and nature. We're sharing some of the findings of some of the Eco Capabilities research, but more broadly the work of Cambridge Curiosity and Imagination, our project partner, through these webinars. And the first webinar, I'm delighted to say, is based on a project, Lost Words and Found Connections. And I'm here with a group of colleagues who are very closely involved in that project. And I'd like to invite them to introduce themselves now. So if I start with Ruth.
Hi, thank you very much, Nicola, for inviting me to participate in this. My name is Ruth Sapsed, and I am the Director of Cambridge Curiosity and Imagination.
Thank you, Ruth. And Filipa?
Hello, so my name's Filipa Pereira-Stubbs, and I'm a CCI artist. Been working with CCI for many years, and I work as a creative practitioner in movement, the arts, many different fields, and have really particularly enjoyed working with CCI in school settings and pedagogy and these kind of bringing in the outdoors into classroom situations.
Thank you, Filipa. And Jake?
Hi, my name is Jake Holt. I'm a reception teacher and with an interest, I suppose, in outdoor learning and learning possibilities outside.
Thank you, Jake. And Pippa?
Hi there, I'm Pippa Joyce. I'm the other reception teacher. Again, we're very keen within our school to get children outdoors and exploring, so that's what really drew us to this project.
Thank you. And Dana?
Hi, I'm Dana Harrison. I'm Deputy Manager in Under 5's Roundabout Preschool, and we love taking part in this research project, and we had loads of fun spending time with reception classes and all the artists involved, small ones and big ones as well.
Thank you. And I'm Nicola Walshe. I'm the Head of School of Education and Social Care at Anglia Ruskin University and the Principal Investigator on the Eco Capabilities Research Project, and have been working with Ruth and colleagues from CCI for a number of years now. So as I said, we want to share with you some of the projects that we're doing over this webinar series, but particularly in this one, the Lost Words and Found Connections project. And what we'll do is reflect very much on the rationale behind the project, what we actually did, but then how we feel it's improved practice of school, etc. And that's why we've got colleagues across from the artist, Ruth as well, and through to the school. So what I'm going to do first is invite Ruth to give a little bit of context about Cambridge Curiosity and Imagination and as an organisation and the work that they do.
Thank you, Nicola. So just a bit of context really about Cambridge Curiosity and Imagination. We are an arts and wellbeing charity. We started to meet as a group of artists, educators, researchers and colleagues working in the cultural sector over 15 years ago now. And what brought us together was a sort of passion for how access to arts and culture can transform lives, and yet it's often seen as a luxury and an add-on. So we were passionate about wanting to find ways to bring arts and culture back into everyone's lives, but we were also really bound together by what we saw as a sort of continual erosion of really important freedoms. And that's not freedoms in all our lives, but particularly children. That was a sort of shared interest for the group. And that's not just about physical freedom, although these are really concerning. And it's ironic that we're making this at a time of, when in lockdown, when all our freedoms have been eroded, our physical freedoms, but also our mental freedoms, the sort of freedom to think and imagine and ask questions for yourself. Now that felt really critical back in 2002 when we started to talk about our work, and it feels even more important now, ever more important. So we've been working together in all sorts of spaces and with all ages. Of course, we've worked in schools because of this interest in children, but we've worked also in libraries and galleries and museums, a lot of work in Adam Brooks Hospital, the main hospital here in the region, and even in a recycling centre. But we've increasingly, as the time's gone on, worked in the outdoors, and we're going to hear more about the importance of the outdoors to our practice, I hope, through this webinar. We're really driven by a vision of an inclusive, accessible and creative society, and we have these principles of practice that we're going to share now on the screen that we thread throughout everything we do. I have them with me when I'm planning projects, artists have them with them when they're relating to the people that they're working with. So children are really at the heart of the process. Their ideas and questions lead the way with how we develop our projects. But artists too are at the heart of the process. And it's, when we talk about artists, we're talking about a particular sort of artist. And I feel really privileged to work with the artists that I work with. And they're artists who are really skilled at this idea of sharing creative practice, at enabling ways for people to notice and question and reflect and make and imagine together and be curious together. So there's a few key words just to pick out in this principles that you can see on the screen now that I think you'll hear in the discussions that are going to follow. That sense of inviting, that sense of we're not learning together by telling people, we're learning by inviting at this sense of sort of shared exploration and companionship. Also these really important ideas of generosity. So generosity with time, with space, and with our attention, with all of our attentions to each other, from each other. And you'll see the word slowliness on this principles in there too, which we use to embrace this sense of a sort of thoughtfulness, not just about pace, but also about depth. So we're giving time for this, we're really giving time to tune into each other and the community and the companions we're working with. The project we're talking about today, Lost Words and Found Connections, happened across an autumn term in 2018. We'd actually been working with Mayfield Primary School since 2016, and Jake was one of the first teachers that we were lucky enough to work with on a project called Artscapers, which was focusing on discovering with the children, led by the children, a new community that's being built right on the doorstep of the school. So what Lost Words and Found Connections offered us was an opportunity to bring that sense of discovery and adventuring, but make it purely about the school grounds. We knew that Mayfield has really generous spaces. They're lucky, they have really lovely spaces, but they knew that they could be using those spaces more creatively. And we've been on a journey, I think, as an arts and wellbeing charity with the school to think about how these spaces can be used differently. Dana and Jake are going to say a bit more about why the children were chosen. But the focus for the project was, it was funded by something called Talking Together, which is an initiative run by the County Council, and the focus was on language and literacy. And in project terms, it was quite a sort of contained, quite a small project, because actually Filipa only met the children on 6 different occasions with my colleague Jo Holland. But we built into that project the idea that the children and Filipa should also have opportunities to invite in their families, their friends, other children in the school, and you'll hear a bit more about that. A little bit about why we called it Lost Words and Found Connections. The Lost Words book has been an important book for the charity because we are linked to one of the authors, Robert McFarlane, as a patron of our charity, but it also sort of brings together some of the real concerns going on in the world about why are children losing connections to nature, and why the origins of the book is that it was published in response to key nature words being taken out of the Oxford Junior Dictionary in 2016. So what happened was the dictionary was published and somebody noticed that out of the dictionary had fallen these very fundamental words for nature. So conker, bramble, ivy, fern. They'd gone from the dictionary, and into the dictionary had come digital words, had come MP3, voicemail. And that really sparked a conversation about, well, why would we not think children need these words, and what's going on in children's lives that they're not using those words? So we as a charity raised the funds for 280 copies to be distributed to all the primary schools in the county, and Mayfield was one of those schools. So we wanted to kind of very gently introduce some of the ideas in the book within the project, and we wanted to play on this idea of connections, so connections with the children to the world that they could explore, but also to each other and their colleagues and their teachers. And so the Lost Words and Found Connections came from that. So altogether 175 people engaged with the project, which was great. There's more on the website about that, but I'm going to just hand over now to Filipa so that she can talk more about her practice and the way that she began to plan this project with the teachers and the children.
Thank you, Ruth. It's really lovely to go back to the framework of this project, and indeed to the time 2016 when that Lost Words book was created, and the shock, I think, in this community of educators, artists, people who believe in nature, that could actually be happening around us. I feel this was a really positive response to that, though. There's been a lot of alarmist conspiracy type drama around the lost words, and this seemed to me an absolutely gem of a project. So this was particularly because we worked with a very small group of children, and the selection of the children, or the invitation for certain children to join us, was really led by the teachers who know them best. And I think for myself as an artist, and certainly all the other CCI artists, what we really value is that process of collaboration. Because we come into a community that we don't know as well as the practitioners within it, it's important that we can spend time listening to each other. And I felt that I was able to go in, I was invited to go into the classrooms and spend time with Dana, Jake and Pippa, the teachers, just seeing how the children worked in their natural environment, their natural, usual, everyday classroom environment. And I noticed also I was able to spend time with seeing how the teachers engaged the outdoor environment, which is the other classroom really, and was able to begin to weave together ideas that could work for this. One of the things that we always have to do is calibrate the skills that I might bring as a practitioner with the skills that the teachers bring, and certainly essentially the skills that the children bring to the practice. I think essentially it's really knowing and trusting that we all have different knowledge bases, and that when we come together in a project like this, we're sharing it. So you mentioned slowness, and slowness is something that we adults have come up with because we need to justify taking time. We need to justify allowing ourselves a fullness, a wholesomeness of really absorbing the environment that we're sitting in, wherever it may be, as you said, Ruth, a garden, a gallery, a hospital. But it's also about a quality of presence that you bring to being in that slowness place. It's a quality of relaxing into not trying to teach, document, pin anything down. It's a quality of sitting alongside somebody and being able to listen to what they say, being able to listen in such a way that you lend as much of yourself as possible to the listening process, but at the same time, you don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed or engulfed. And I think this particular little group of children, what was most important to all of us is that they became companions with one another. So that support that you mentioned, Ruth, where these children became the protagonists in shaping the story of visiting this magical corner in Mayfield, which is a magical school, but also that they became companions to one another, and the age differences became negligible. We became companions to them, and I think each of us so enjoyed that process. And they then were given the invitation to become curators of the process, in that they drew their pictures, they hung their pictures on the last session, and they then invited family in and took their families around the space that they had explored together. So it's about slowness, it's about quality of presence, quality of listening. It's about being able to be creative alongside each other. I think the other main weave to this project was being in the environment with all our senses. So that kind of visceral, embodied way of beginning to make sense of the world. And what was essential to us was that the world that we visited together became a place of magic that sparked the engagement, that sparked the desire to tell a story, either with words or with picture or with modeling or with creating a relationship. Because I think as practitioners, we all knew that these children had so much to say, but were, for one reason or another, not quite finding the confidence to speak and be heard in the usual classroom setting, which of course is very challenging for all children and the teachers. So the ability to reduce the group and create the kind of learning journey and excitement of adventure that sparked the initiative to, I want to share this story. I want to find the right imagination to imagine a story and share that with you. I'm slightly losing my words here, which is perfect for this, but it's just that sort of, I think that spark was very important to us. And what we learned together, the adults, was how children naturally inhabit that place of slowness, how given a bit of a structure to stop and pause, reflect, share, imagine, how richly and quickly and with such sheer delight they just pour themselves into that invitation. So it actually became an incredibly easy and organic project. We shaped it gently, but very, I think the depth of our belief in the project really anchored it well, so that the children's imaginations could just soar and grow and blossom. Even though we were moving from the autumn into the winter, it felt like a kind of a spring emergence, re-emergence. I should probably stop talking now, shouldn't I?
So I've unmuted. So thank you so much, Ruth and Filipa. That's really lovely to hear sort of the rationale behind the project and how you approached it in particular. I think what we'll now have is a discussion around from different perspectives. So from the perspective of the school, the teachers, and also the artists, if you would want to contribute as well, as to that process, the process of undertaking that work alongside with the children. And if I could start, if I may, by asking, what was it that you hoped to get out of the project yourselves, in particular as teachers, and why did you embark on this project?
I was really interested in a new way of thinking from a sort of personal point of view, sort of new ways of practice, new ways of thinking about the children's learning and the way they interact with each other, and what the options could be in an outdoor space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree entirely with Jake, but I think it came up at the perfect time for us as well. We'd embarked on the use of the outside space that we have, which the children mark the secret garden at school, and we'd been using it for a number of years in a sort of out and about welly walk style session with our classes, but to find ways of enriching that usage was really, really beneficial for us, and intriguing as well about what we could do to utilise the space that we had and the resource we had.
I think I was trying to probably find a different perspective and have some other people involved with the children from Roundabout, because as Jake and Pippa said, we all been using the conservation area, but it was lovely to see other professionals using the area in completely different imaginative way and showing the children things which we as professionals didn't really spot. And of course the children discovered many things completely themselves, but yeah, take an artist to conservation area and you've got magic immediately.
About to work together before, because even though we should explain that Roundabout is literally on the same site as the school, but it's an independent nursery, isn't it? You're run by different organisations. So had you ever tried to do a project like that together before?
So this was first time we worked together on a project like this. We only do transition times when we take the children to visit the classes. However, we never go in, or before that we haven't done any collaborative work together. So it was a lovely start.
Absolutely.
And has that relationship developed since the project, in terms of the transition or the way in which you work between the nursery setting and foundation stage within the school setting?
I think we're very lucky to be in such close proximity, and I think you can't underestimate the value of the over the fence talk. I think because it's unorchestrated. It's there. We're outside. They're outside. The adults talk. The children talk. There's so much contact, and I think that's probably increased since the project. And it sounds really sort of slightly direct contact, but it's such a lovely way of seeing that the children being connected with others, because some of the children that Dana might speak to most could be children that are actually never been to Roundabout. They're just really interested about what's over that fence. I think we're really keen to carry on building on that contact with them.
I think somebody commented that how much they felt the children enjoyed seeing you as the adults being friends together in the project. That sense of, oh, you like each other and you have lots of things to say to each other. That was a nice thing for the children to see.
So it's a good place to say that. So what happened is that I would go out with Dana and Jake, and then I would go out with Dana and Pippa. So we had two groups in essence, didn't we? So it was a small group with about 5 children, Dana, from 4 or 5 from around.
Yeah, 5 or 6 children. Yes, really small group. The same from Mayfield, I believe.
Yeah.
I think we didn't ever go over 14 as a sort of whole.
There'd be 3 adults and our colleague.
It was 4 adults because we had Joe as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then so it was an interesting collaboration of teacher they knew very, very well, and then teachers they knew from over the fence, and then 2 new faces. It was a very interesting dynamic for them, I felt, to come into that, and I think we modeled something really positive. And one of the aims we had in the beginning of the project was how we could not only give these children a platform to explore and find their voices, but to also then share those with older children, which they rose to, didn't they? Jake and Pippa, we then invited your children to lead sessions, creative sessions, drawing sessions in the school, where they took year 6 children so these are reception children taking year 6 children through a drawing creative experience, which was highly successful. It was really respectful the way the year 6 children listened and took on the ideas and had such a good time. It was genuine. It was a genuine sharing.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I found most interesting was seeing how the different children approached or were nervous about the whole area. You'd see some who were very trusting in the adults that were taking them and were willing to go, but when they arrived they were slightly nervous, or children who were very reticent to leave their classroom and area that they knew and venture outside of that, but once they were there they were fine. And seeing really the blossom of the individualities of the child was very apparent when you've got those few children in front of you.
I have to say I absolutely loved the fact how much sharing was happening. There was sharing of snacks, sharings of stories, sharing of paintings, then children shared their little journeys. It was so much sharing through all the sessions. It was absolutely wonderful.
I felt that was down to the structure of the way that Filipa and Joe and Ruth started it off. In that in the early planning stages, Filipa was going to have lots of conversations with different people and sort of cultivating the idea of what we were going to do in a way which involved everybody really carefully. And there was a lot of reflection and thought and planning involving all the different people who were part of it. And that not just the adults, that's the children at every step as well. And so that sharing that was happening, it could well be a reflection of the way the whole thing was set up.
That's
really... Sorry, go on.
So it's really nice to hear, because then we did also, because I think often people can get very confused when you mention the word arts or creativity, and there's a fear of or a escape into perceived chaos. And in truth, the journey over to the magical corner was very carefully orchestrated. There was a meeting at the gate, there was waiting, there was children leading each other. Then when we actually got to that space, we had almost a liminal space between regular Mayfield exploration to the magical spot, where we sat on these logs and took the time to snack, to refresh ourselves, to nourish ourselves, and then with the imagination begin to nourish that sense of creativity by imagining, listening, watching. I remember, Jake, you carrying a leaf that one child had shared very carefully along the group. You actually physically created that bridge because there was a bit of shyness of actually making that direct gesture, and you very naturally took that leaf and took it around so everybody was part of it. And it didn't matter whether people spoke or commented or not. It was the fact that everybody had a turn that really mattered. And then we would rather ceremoniously get prepared to go in. Jake or Pippa would open the gate with a flourish, and in we would go. And it was so delicious the way they increasingly took ownership of that space. And what we did again is very carefully is we introduced one new material each week, a basket of pastels, a series of boards with black paper, just one simple material. Bit by bit we introduced ideas, and then we brought them out each time so that they almost had a studio. What we created in that space was a studio environment where their materials were there, their inspiration was there, and their companions were there. So it's very carefully structured, the whole thing, and that's when I think creativity really flourishes.
That careful structuring also allowed for lots of communication at each point, which in essence was the objective of the whole project. But that sort of the journey to get to the conservation area, and then the sitting down beforehand, each had a different opportunity for communicating between the children, adult to children and adult to adults.
It was really amazing that it really didn't matter what the final product was, but the journey to get to the product or to the story or to the exploration, the whole journey was always really important, and everybody's little story was listened or was recorded in a drawing, and that was, I think, the magic of the whole project, I think.
That listening that you've just mentioned connects to the slowness, the CCI idea of slowness, because that's slowing right down from educators' point of view, that's slowing right down and really trying to listen to what the children are saying and acting on what they're saying or remembering so that you can use it next time, or helping them to develop their talking. I felt that I learned to listen in a different way than I had done before as a teacher. So
yeah,
I felt sorry, Pippa.
No, I was just thinking about the closeness. It's an odd thing to think about right now in our current scenario, but actually I remember sort of scanning around the area when we were in there with the children, and you just see little pockets of either a very small group of children very close looking at something, or an adult and a child low down looking at something, or there were just little pockets of very close people really involved in something. It could have been many things, but it was always just, very rarely were we all together.
That closeness and that enthusiasm and interest in something, it is connected to the listening in a way in that we were trying very hard to, as a teacher, it's really easy to be thinking about your curriculum. So the EYFS, or if you're further up in the school, the national curriculum, and it's really difficult to get away from thinking, which part of the curriculum is this? But actually the ability to, so the way the project was slow, and those small groups of closeness and the listening enabled, I felt, me to learn a new way of trying not to remember whatever.
I think we specifically chose not to take the iPads with us for that very reason. I just remember that we took, even though you can use them as a camera, it was a very specific choice that we took cameras. We did not take iPads, because for me, my iPad is a work tool. We use an online journaling program, which Roundabout uses as well, and that's basically all it's for. So cameras were a definite very specific choice of use.
I think really conscious less is more is so important, isn't it, Filipa? That idea that you only need one material and you only need, you know, the more you can strip it away, the more there's space for the children and their ideas, isn't there? And for the natural world to be there in its kind of fullness.
And
I remember one child being very, very enticed and, I don't know, completely aghast at the fact that Filipa had a blanket and then she had some sparkly lights, and they were two things, like two quite simple, and suddenly this creation that he'd made with sticks was the most amazing, magical endeavour.
Oh, I'm remembering that, Pippa. We had black felt blankets so that the children could build shelters. And Jake, I don't know, I tasked Jake with the job of building shelters, which I had never done before. We had these little cut up bike tubes. Do you remember, in a tube? And we were just...
I use them still. I've cut up all of my bike tubes ever since.
We use them to just really carefully and sometimes clumsily create spaces. And then we brought in tiny little battery operated fairy lights, didn't we? So that they could create that light dark, because we were moving into the winter nights. And it's that generosity of using what's in abundance all around us, which was that shadow, light. And the pond was very dark, wasn't it? And they would fish for what's inside the pond. That also had that sort of unknown quality. So it's not about carting in loads of expensive things, but just appreciating the generosity of a few simple things and changing them.
I think the space was really generous to us, because the whole environment changed with every session. At the beginning, it was full of leaves and beautifully yellow leaves, and children, you couldn't see them because everything was overgrown. But then the last session, there was barely any leaves, there was frost, and the discoveries were completely different again, and the children just, I think, loved it. And as a professional, I looked at tiny little changes much more closely than I ever watched them before, because the children have discovered them and pointed them out. It wasn't me. It definitely wasn't my eyes. It was the children's perspective which pointed out big branches and teeny tiny little nutshells, which actually were holders for teeny tiny little things. And one of the children were wondering, holder for things? And then a whole discussion about, is a nutshell a holder? Whole discussion began about that. It was amazing.
Dana, can you say something about the picture of Mia that you chose? Because you chose a picture that we'll put up on the screen, won't we, of Mia holding a...
So there was lots and lots of magical moments, and it sometimes feels tricky to choose the most magical ones or the ones to talk about. But Mia found an enormous stick, and when we were sharing stories in a circle, she held the stick up, she stood up and said, "This is number one. It's very big, number one." And this was the first time in 2 years I heard her talk. She has not talked in a group ever before. She has never been able to voice her ideas ever before. I only heard her sing. So absolute amazing magical moment. The fact that in a group of children she stood up and used her big voice. So that was amazing.
That links really well to one of the photos that I chose as well, which is actually, it's got me in it where I'm looking at the child. I think Dana may have actually captured the moment where we were sitting again in a circle, and there's one child from my class who very, very aware of himself, very unwilling to share in group activities or in group times, and he had to stand up again because he was so unbelievably excited about something that had happened during his time in the secret garden, and had to tell everybody. And you can see in his expression and in my expression of watching him just how important a point that was for him. And I think the introduction to using the secret garden with Filipa and in this process meant for the rest of the year it was almost like his safe space, and it was his space that he used to express himself, and was basically one of the only spaces that he used for mark making or anything like that, because he really saw it as almost his.
Oh, I think there's something it's, I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm still so fascinated by when we take our body, our senses into an environment and respond. So we talked a lot about, we touched, we smelt, we listened, we felt, we really engaged with the materials of nature. And I think that bodily awareness, that sensation, is so affirming for all of us, but we lose it more and more. We become slightly, more distant from our body. It's just such a lovely relationship between the environment, because I know this is very much about, eco capabilities, and how do we bring ourselves more fully, more wholesomely, more well into the world. And I think we really modeled that, both Dana and Pippa, what you said, that excitement of having to actually stand up on both feet. And when you stand up with both feet, it means you've got both feet firmly on the ground. And we see a lot of children who don't have that balance, who tiptoe around the place, or who always look slightly lopsided or slightly not present. It's very interesting how grounding being outdoor is. You literally have the ground beneath your feet and the sky above your head, and nature's relentless, just changing softly all the time. You can't grasp anything, because next week you come back and it's changed. And it's changed for the better, because those shelters you built, creatures have come into them, or that nest of tiny little leaves, tiny little seeds, something's been added to them. And it's just it's such a I don't know, fascinating way of working. And what you said, Dana, that you'd look around, there'd be little clusters, Pippa, you said it, of small. And that's what happens. One child would find something, their immersion in that moment would draw the others, and it would draw us as well. It's really interesting. When somebody's looking at something with absolute rapt attention, it's that presence again. You want to go and look at it well, and then you want to turn to somebody and say, look at what I'm seeing. Are you feeling what I'm feeling? And how do we bring more of that magic, which is very simple, that outdoor learning environment in all?
We need to go out more. We need to be out more with the children, and have got less children and more adults.
It's really interesting question though, Filipa, and what would be really interesting for you to reflect on is how your practice has changed. What has the lasting impact been on your practice, or on the way that you work with the children as a result of the project?
We felt, I think people probably agree, that the project, being part of the project, has definitely had impact on our practice afterwards. We used lots of the ideas that were part of it in our everyday practice, including weekly welly walks to the conservation area, which are modelled in a thinking manner on the Lost Words project.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's been mentioned numerous times already, but that thought of slowliness, I think,
that's my favourite bit.
Just so key for us. It's so unbelievably important that you can't squeeze a session like this into a short time frame. It doesn't work. Obviously, any time outside is beneficial, but for something like this, you do need as much time as you possibly can. Really, you need to be able to spend that time getting all of the correct clothes on, and spend that time waiting for the whole group to arrive at the gate, and spend that time discussing who might be missing and whether we can leave yet without them, and that time about what does together mean. We're going to journey over there together. What does that mean? Does that mean that Johnny's going to run ahead, or does that mean that we're going to be this group exploring on our way as a unit? And then, oh no, someone's forgotten the cups for the hot chocolate. Oh, let's go back. You need to just make sure that you have this time to explore all of those things, and spend 20 minutes having hot chocolate at the log circle before you go in.
I feel it's made, I feel the journeying aspect has become really important, and it was definitely important as part of the project, but I sort of feel like that possibility for listening along the way, we've developed from Filipa's practice, and we've been trying to carefully to make sure we're listening to plan for next week. And that idea of invitation as well is, as I think I said earlier, something that we not necessarily accustomed to as teachers. So there's two specific things there: journeying, invitation, listening. In fact, three things that I feel that we definitely do in a different way than we did previously.
Absolutely.
I have to agree with dedicating time for the journey, because when you know you do have plenty of time to do it, you don't then rush to certain point. You don't rush the children to go from A to B. And because I didn't rush the children, so many amazing situations happened when, for example, when one of the boys climbed a tree, because the conservation area has got amazing tree. And he climbed very high and didn't know how to get down. And under normal circumstances, as a practitioner, because you have to get back, you probably would have to lead the child to get down. But I had the choice to say to him, well, how can you do it? And he took 30 minutes to get down, but he did it all by himself, only with children helping him where to put his foot and what to hold. I was nearby to catch him if he falls. However, I was not involved in this amazing journey down at all. It was all his. And if I didn't have the time to do that, you as a practitioner, you would have to say, I'm afraid I will come up there and help you to get down. But he had a chance to do it all by himself. And the learning in the journey down was just so much learning. So yeah, I think dedicating time to our little exploration and journeys out is really important.
Yeah, and the way that we do, obviously, we don't have the wonderful Filipa to harness. We go on our own, and so it means that each of our groups go once every 2 weeks, and we made that decision because actually the importance of having the smaller group was more important than the children doing it every week, because we saw the benefit of being able to have those capsules of conversation and how the different groups evolve as well. I think keeping those groups the same has been really important for us, because they sort of regulate themselves and understand how they, as their own little ecosystem, work and people's roles in different things, and that's been a really nice evolution.
They develop interests as well, so they have ideas that they react to each other's ideas, and then you get a similar thing the next week, which is built upon what they've done previously. And we've ended up with sort of stories being developed over several weeks, or play being developed with the children who, as Pippa says, are sort of developing their group together. It's given them a wonderful opportunity to sort of do something and build upon it in different areas, in different ways.
Okay, so it's clearly you're very passionate about the practice and the experiences that you and the children have been through and continue to go through. I just wondered if you had any advice to offer other teachers in terms of how they might be able to begin to engage with this sort of practice.
It's the time, like Donna's been saying, is about allocating some time without a specific objective. I feel like it's the time and the structure of the thinking beforehand, and within within your practice. And so Pippa and I were trying to make sure that we talked less. But talking, is that fair for me to say? Talking less and listening more, and maybe having, like, giving yourself a small number of objectives to look at your own practice, but also that the structure of the project is important.
I think in my case, the advice would be, forget what you want to achieve, forget what you think you might see, and forget where you want to go. Let the children decide what they see, what they want to do, use their ideas for your lead, because that's the massive difference which I learned with Filipa. That, again, I said it many times, I see completely different things. The children can spot so many more amazing things than the adults can.
I had an experience the other day. I was walking in the evening, and there was a little boy. It really reminded me of this project. It was like a flashback, because there was a little boy on a scooter and his mum on a bike, and he was on the path in front of me and she was on the road, and he was scooting along and then just stopped suddenly in front and jumped, ants, there's ants, and mum, come on, let's go, and they did that sort of like, let's go, and he sort of got back on his scooter and jumped up again, there's more. It was just this about 10 meters. He must have stopped 5 or 6 times to really bend down and look at these ants, and he was scooting along. How he had noticed them, I don't know, but it's absolutely just that ability for children to see and notice things that we probably never normally would unless we really slowed down. But they dance like close to the floor, one thing, and they want to engage with the world around them. They're programmed to do so, and we need to let them do that.
Their interests are not.
They're so tiny, because otherwise maybe we've lost the skills because we haven't done it enough. I don't know. I think it's just using it.
Their interests are not encapsulated by any sort of curriculum or foundation stage. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most important things for me, we're really lucky because we do have this space, and it is kind of a cornered off space within our school grounds that we can use. But actually, I don't think that's the most important part. It's a space that we've used because we have it. But actually, I think children could see the magic in any type of space. One exciting resource that, like pastels, for instance, can create magic anywhere. If you've got a corner of your school grounds, I think you could still use that in the same type of way as we have. It's just giving that time and the ability to use imagination and exploration to make that space their own.
I think also knowing that what you're going to do from the children's point of view is going to be slightly different from what they might normally do, and so that when Filipa was coming in, we knew that we were going to take part in the project, and after the first time they became used to that, and now we're doing it on a weekly basis or 2 weekly basis. They know that it's a slightly different experience, and so we call it welly walk or out and about, but you could call it whatever you wanted to. But labelling that slight freedom, it means that they have acted in a different way than they might do within the foundation stage area. I don't know what Dana or Pippa think of that.
I mean, we have carried on taking the children out, even if it wasn't the conservation area. So we would walk to Histon Road Rec, or just to have a look at the building works on a road, and all those places which are not specifically just plants and beautiful corner of wood. They all have got their magic. On our journey, we heard somebody playing piano, and they invited us to their driveway, and we sat down and listened to them playing piano. We had builders stopping us and explaining to children about how to build scaffolding, and the following week we were watching roofers build a roof. I mean, if you take the children out and keep taking them out, the surroundings will get used to that children are out, and they will invite you into their world and into their professions. And everybody was so happy to share their professions and their knowledge with the children. And for the children, it was such a unique experience, which behind the shut doors of Preschool they would have not experienced. Yeah.
I love that, Dana. I love that you say that you take the children out, the outside will become used to the children wanting to engage. As you said, Pippa, when you spend time, it opens up our eyes. It takes us back to remembering, which, our outrage was initially around what, for our age, well, Ruth and I, conkers. How could you take conkers out? I mean, come on. Or wren or blackbird. How do you take that word out? That means so much to us. And then with that outrage, just softening into what the children are discovering and realizing it's all still absolutely essential, and it can be everything and anything, and that sort of intermingling. It's the joy, isn't it, of this creative place which we can create anywhere. As you say, Jake, it does have to be slightly safeguarded. It's like that is, I felt that was the role that you three brought to it so magnificently, so heroically. You really safeguarded that space, and you allowed yourselves to transition from being box tickers to companions to the children, which I found very, very moving. I was very relaxed in that space because we were all in it together. That was a real, really made this a very favorite project.
I've just remembered that something that we have changed while we do it is we actually hand over the cameras to the children now. So we have big A3, some people call them floor books, as they're just big books, that are our Welly Walk books, and they're absolutely jam-packed full of children's photographs of their views, of their experiences, and to look through them is, I think, particularly important for us, because you see through their eyes what they find particularly important to them, and I think they're amazing. But that it has moved from us taking the photos of them, of what they're doing, to them taking the photos, and we have our brains for remembering what they did. Yeah.
Great, lovely, thank you. I think it would be really helpful, Ruth, for you to give us a sense of where people can find out more. So if there's teachers, trainee teachers, educators, parents who are interested in this sort of practice, are there places that they can find out more about how to go about doing it, or at this particular project?
Yeah, so our website is a really rich resource about this project, but also many of the other projects we've run. So we'll put the website address up on the screen, but if you go to the projects tab in our website, you actually find this particular project in the archive because it happened a couple of years ago. But there's a post for each of the days that we went. There's a slide set of film about some of the evaluation. There's also, we put together these pocket adventures as one of the outcomes that was from the project, and you can download those, you could have a look at those. And then in the resources section of the website, there's a lot of publications that we've put together over the years. Perhaps the one that's most relevant to this is 37 Shadows, which is an account of a project with similar age children, nursery age children, actually slightly younger, so 2 and 3 year olds adventuring in the woods, and the artists wrote about the stories that they had written, and they're all free to read online. You can buy them as publications, but there's a lot of materials on our website for people to have a look at. And we're also about to publish an account of the work that we've been doing with Mayfield over the 4 years, so that will be coming up on the website soon as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And sort of just to add from my perspective in terms of our research, there is also a tab on the Eco Capabilities project which we're moving forward with. So we're working with Ruth and Filipa, other CCI artists, to really explore the impact of some of this practice on children's mental health and well-being in particular. So we're sort of framing the idea of eco capability, so building on Sen's notion of capabilities as a way of human flourishing, to think about, well, what do children need to flourish, and how is that connected? How can that be developed through this artistic practice in nature? And really that's the thrust of the Eco Capabilities project, and we'll be putting more on the website as that develops over the next few months and years. Thank you so much for listening. It's been great to be able to share such fantastic work with you, and hopefully we'll be able to develop more in this series too, so you can see the range of practice in other contexts with other children, with other ages that CCI are working with, but also some more of the results of the research that we're doing alongside them. Thank you. And thanks everybody for your contributions. They've been fantastic.